All right, good day to all. Sam here, back with you Tuesday. We're mid-morning, Tuesday, December 26th. And I had a few members who wanted an update on Bitcoin, and this I thought this would be a good example. This is a trade that I'm in, that we're in from the room, so I can kind of demonstrate some things that I talk about a lot in video, where you can get the idea of how to add to a position and take advantage of some of the price action that we're seeing here. So now take note here. I've got Bitcoin to the dollar. This is the 1 hour. And it's on Bitstamp, which just happens to be where I'm trading it. But I use this as a reference, and it will be very close exchange to exchange. But it's been particularly good here on Bitstamp. Now, I'm also in log scale, so we can see some better definition here. So the first trade, as you can see here, so we have the initial entry here that we got here, and then these are two ads that have come on since. Now, I'll blow this up, but first let me just show you why we were buyers here, and this should be... I mean, it's about as straightforward as it gets. And if you've watched my videos or been following this methodology, this is pretty simple, really. So the hard part is that when the market's falling, there's a tendency to be fearful of it, right? But that's really, the funny thing is when you wait for the retracement, but when it happens, most people are not comfortable with the buy. They want to wait till it's safe, so you miss the good entry. So here you can see it. Again, it's as textbook as it can be. So we're going from what I've currently labeled as a wave 2 low. It's a big wave 3, no doubt about it, and a pretty steep sell-off. But you could see the market start to stabilize as we approach the 50. So here's the 50. Now it looks askew here because we're in log scale. Right, it looks weird. So if I take that out of log scale, you get a better look at it. But it just shows you the definition a little better when you go to log scale. But we can keep it here so that makes sense to you. So here's the 2 low, potentially here as we labeled. Right? And you can't be definitive about these, but all of the subdivision was there for this to be a 2 to a 3. So just fib pull 101, we're going to go from the low of 2 to the high of 3. It comes right to the 50, and yeah, we go through by a few ticks, but what a pretty entry that was. And the reaction there was extreme. So it was a trade that, right, so I understand emotionally, if you're new to this, it's hard to pull the trigger there. If you've done this as long as I have, you're salivating, hoping that it'll come back to the 50. And the reaction there was so quick, we were able to move the stop up, within half an hour. You had the stop, you had the risk reduced, and now that's a pretty nice looking trade here. So it was just a simple front run in front of the 50. We wicked the 50. You see, we had some prior resistance up here. Offered a little support. So it was all there. But I do understand it's hard to pull the trigger, when you're new to this and the market's going straight down. So let me open this up a little bit, and we can look at where the next opportunities were. So it certainly gave you multiple chances if you were uncomfortable with the buy here at the 50. So you can see here now, per traders in our room amongst members that took the trade there, we've already reduced our exposure. I mean, really, you could go to break even. I mean, no reason not to. If it's going to come back that far, then this count is going to be invalidated, which is still. I mean, it still could happen. We're still in an internal retracement. So if I pull this, I mean, we're pushing up to the extreme. So if I go to our low here, so you can see here's the 50, here's the 618. So potentially we run into some more resistance up here when we get to the 618, which we may do while I'm recording this. But the key to this were the opportunities over the weekend, where you had multiple opportunities to get long. If you didn't take it here, you certainly had a chance to add here. Now, if you did take it here, this is the sweetness of adding with house money, right? So we're already in a nice profit, so we get the opportunity to add here a couple of times. So expect to see a little resistance here as we come up to the 618, right? There'll be algos there that they'll have to fight through. So if we look here now, let me open this up yet again so we can see. So here, I mean, there were points of concern over the weekend. You can't be definitive. It's always just a possibility. But the tells were here along the way. So let me pull this off so we can kind of recreate it, so you can see how the next time, if and when we see this, you can get a little more comfortable with this. So these were the add-ons, right? So when the market came down here, there was some question mark because it was not the best symmetry you've ever seen in an ABC, because we had a fairly long and well-established A wave, but a very short 3-wave into a B, and there was some question mark as to where the B was. But this was the deepest retracement of what appeared to be an ABC. So this was the tell here. So we had we have a little zigzag. So we get an A wave here into a 3-wave double top into that B, and then we get our ending diagonal into the A wave. There's the 3-wave B. And then we start a 5-wave sequence that is an impulsive wave. So from there's the 1, 2, we come down to the 3. This is the deepest retracement for the 4. We don't overlap the 1. So it was all there, and if I recall, this was also very technical as a potential sell. All right, so we come right into the high probability zone for a 4th between the 38 and the 50, and then we get the final spike down. So given that, then the question is, if we have the count right, at that point, you've got to have an impulsive wave here. So this move here, and it was shaky for a little bit, right? I mean, I had an eye on it. So it was shaky here, where it was a question mark as to whether we were going to get a 3-wave or a 5-wave. Because if we had failed to breach this little double top here, there was certainly the potential for this thing to roll over and then head back down. And a lot of people were really worried about that we were going back down towards the 618. It had that potential here had we not gotten this final push here, which gave us a 5-wave, so we could more confidently project that we had a 1, here's our 2, 3, 4. Note here, this was also a bit of a tell. So if you look in here, so if this is our 3, here's our 1, we come a couple of ticks from it, we don't overlap. So reasonable to assume that we had an impulsive structure. So the question was, were we going to hold? Were we going to test this again? So there's the 1, there's the 3, A, B, we come down for that trademark crypto shallow C, and then we go up for the 5. And then, so now you're a little more confident with this entry here in that we've gone into an impulsive move. So we've got our 1 wave coming out of the deeper trace. Well, of course, then it's just a matter of, can we get, where are we with that retracement? Are we going to get an ABC? And, expect, as it's Bitcoin, right? So the expectation is you're going to get subdivision. We're not just going to go straight down. And we get it. So we get a little ABC into the A wave. Here's our, kind of a shallow B wave. And then yet again, we don't quite make the 100% here for the C. But then as we get a series of higher lows and higher highs, again you start to breathe a little more easily as that starts to show itself as potentially now with a low in, and now we're hitting a trend here. So we were first buyers here off of this, right? So you can see we had an ABC here. So there was reasonable to anticipate that the correction could have been over here. It was deep enough. We were to the 50. There's no reason not to be a buyer there, right? The stop, you had to take a little more risk here because the stop had to go under the 786. And we get one more push down. And in fact, we get through the 6.5, but we hold the 786. We know it's a 2-wave. So our anticipation is that this is a 2-wave, knowing it can go anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So the first entry here is smaller in size, right, as I recommended to members. You want to be smaller here so you have enough dry powder to be able to add here at the 618 if we're going to come back down and challenge that. So we had a buy here and a buy. Actually, this is kind of an averaged in price. Then we had a buy at the 618 on the front run of the 618. So you get a blended price here. If you split the difference between the two, you're about 13.18. And, combining the entry here, so I have to blow it up. So combining the entry here with these two, that's a nice looking trade, right? So, that's a very Merry Christmas. Thank you, Bitcoin. So now, where are we? Are we, we can't be definitive about much here other than we're likely to run into some resistance as we bump into the 618 on the way back. Here's the algo target here. Here's our first target, which, if I recall, is pretty close to our 618. So let me draw that up. There's nothing you haven't seen here many times before. So here, interesting, right? So here's our algo target, and then here's our little window that we're likely to bump into some resistance at the 618. So we've got a fairly significant wall of resistance here to get through for this to carry on as a 3rd wave. So as we look at this now. What I see potentially here, I think what we've got now is we're just carving out the 1. Well, here's our 1, 2. This could be the 3. It's a little shallow. So, again, just measuring it out. Let me, I'll pull these off since I know where they are. Okay, so let's pull those off so we can get a better look at this. So let's pull that off. And we know we've got this part of it pretty tight. Okay, so now we look at this and we can see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like we've got our 1. Let's just measure it out to be sure about it. And this is, you know, just the bit of the work you've got to do to get a handle. So if you're going to trade this methodology, you got to be willing to do this work and measure it out. So I can get an impulse. Pardon me. I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leading diagonal here into a 1 wave. So this would appear to be a completed 1 and probably a 2 here, putting in a 3, 4, 5. So this could be the 1 of 3. You know, hard to be definitive about it yet, other than I can see a good leading diagonal with a 1 wave here. Now, I could have, this could be AB shallow C. That looks more likely here on the hourly. So then we get a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So potentially we're putting in the 3rd. Now let's measure it out as you would for any wave like this. So if that's my 1, I'm projecting from, hard to call, make a call here. I'm going to go with this since that gives us a subdivision of 3 as our 2 here. So we've already gone 100%. If we're going to bust through that resistance, then we can get our high probability target here. So we don't know. You know, we're going to run into a little resistance here, but this is where you'd like to see it get for confirmation that you are safely now in a 3rd wave, that we can be confident in that labeling. Now, of course, we're going to put some median lines on this. So if I dial that up, here's my low, here's my pivot high, there's my C low. You know, that's kind of steep, but if we're going to keep going, this plays pretty nicely. I can get this over here. So potentially I get my 3rd here on the outer edge. I might have to look at an alternate here if it's going to stay on that trajectory. So we check the shift. That could play. Modified shift, more like a channel. Well, that's kind of interesting. So we may be running into a little bit of median line of resistance here. So we know we've got resistance close by, but we're trying to complete this. So even if I take that down to a 15-minute, which is as low as I will encourage you to go. So we can see if this is my 2. If I've got a 3-wave B, and then I've got the shallow 2, which is the crypto trademark of late at least. So I can get a clear 5-wave on this. So I can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can be completing here. I might look for some relationship here between my 1 wave projected from my 4th wave. You know, we're getting up there. Yeah, so certainly this this would be a likely spot up here if we're going to complete in this. And within that, again, so in addition to the fact that we're running into the median line here, and we know from median line trading principle number 3 that if we don't pivot on the median line, that we might hover around it before the market decides which direction it's going to go. We're going to challenge the upper parallel or the lower parallel. So given I've got everything that I would look for, I've got all the subdivision, you know, I'm bumping into to see if the oscillators would be a little help here. So potentially we've got some divergence here. So this could be weakening here. We've got divergence here in the RSI. Volume's still bullish, but we're not as high here. So we could very easily be putting in a bit of a top here. We'll see. I mean, it's early. It's too soon to call that. I can see a 5-wave subdivision here into the 5th. So this makes sense. I'd likely want to put another median line on that, so we can get a handle on that, see where we are relative to that. I go back to original here, and of course that's doesn't surprise me at all. So there's a little bit of resistance as we tap the median line here. So you can see this. So relative, so we've got the larger median line here, which we tapped here. Now we're hovering around it, but we're tapping this right here. So potentially you're putting in an interim top right here, but I wouldn't be, you know, so brazen to call that just yet. So what I see is likely we're just in the 1 wave. So this is going to be legit. Here's our 2 on the larger degree. Here's our 2. We get this clean 1, 2. So potentially here, we're putting in the 3. So let me change the degree so you can. Let me change the color. Put that in blue, and let's go up a degree. All right. So there's our 1, 2. Potentially putting in a 3 up here of the one wave. Okay, so you see here's, so it's 1, 2. So I'm not calling the top of the 3. What I'm calling is potentially the top of the one wave of the 3. So that implies much higher prices. So if we go all the way back out, let's go back out to the hourly and then look at where we could be going. So we're looking here now on the smaller degree. We're looking for the 3 relative to this 1, 2, 3 here. But we have the larger 3 up here relative to the deep 1, 2. You see that? So it's waves within waves within waves, right? As you often hear me say. So right now we're just trying to get a handle on where we are, because the dominant play that we're working off of is in white here, the 1, 2. Now we're just measuring for subdivision within the third, and we're not calling a top here, because if we're going to play out in blue, so we have 3, 4, 5, so this would bring this potentially up here. You know, let me put that in a smaller degree. Again, just trying to make it all make sense. Okay, so that's what I've got. So that's exactly how I'm trading this, exactly what I see. I've got good entries down here at the 50 and then again here. So, I mean, it's perfectly positioned. The market is subdividing nicely. I've got clear Elliott counts. I've got good fib relationships. The market seems to be adhering to these median lines very nicely. I mean, there's no reason to do anything other than sit and watch this play out. I would not be selling up here if we happen to go into our high probability zone. You know, if anything, we're setting up the next opportunity to add yet again for the 4th of the 3rd. You see that, right? So here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potentially of our 3rd, and we don't know yet if we're topped. We're just running into some median line resistance. But if we're going to go up again, here's our probability target. We'd like to see that 3rd come in here. If we get that, so let me, since I've got that marked off, let's pull some of this out so you can see it. Okay, so we get a potential roadmap here. If we're going to come up here and get our 5th up here, well, then all we're going to do is exactly what we've done and what we do every time. So we're going to take from our 2, just for the sake of the dialogue, let's say we get our 5th up here. Well, then we're going to look for our 4th here, somewhere between the 38 and the 50. So it's going to set up the next buy zone where we, again, have the potential to leverage into an add with house money, because we're long from way down here and we've got multiple adds along the way. So that's, you know, I often will talk about take the advantage of Elliott trading when the market is cooperating, when it's giving you the subdivisions that you're looking for. So it's like you have an unfair advantage. You know where the market is setting up for potentially the next opportunity to be a buyer if it's going to follow this count. So what we're seeing right now is just textbook. It's just, it couldn't be any more cooperative. So when the market is offering you that kind of precision and that kind of perfect subdivision, that's when you really have to take advantage of it, because the reality is you won't see this in the market all the time, or even a majority of the time. But when it's playing ball with you and it's doing exactly what you'd expect, that's when you really have to take advantage of it to offset all those times where you have a trade failure, or you get a 1-2 and you think you're into a 3rd and then it turns and the bottom falls out and you get a failure rate. I mean, that's just the reality of trading. But when you have the roadmap in advance, like it appears is happening right here, you got to make hay. That's when you got to really, you can be a little bit more aggressive. So you can't be reluctant to be adding, and because here's the novice thinking, oh, I don't want to risk giving back my profit, or I don't want to risk getting stopped out, so I'm going to be super tight with my stop. No, you want to let this thing play out, because this is your opportunity to. So we've had multiple adds. So we've had the first buy, the second buy, the third buy to average down that price, and then we have potentially the 4th buy setting up here yet again if we're going to get a 3-4. So we would have potentially within this little run here, based just on the Elliott count and the fib pulls, 4 places where we've been able to add safely, relatively safely, right, as safe as you can be in trading, safely with a trend underway in Bitcoin, right? So here was the first one. This was the scariest one because the market's going straight down. But it really, a market approaching a 50 on that kind of time frame, that's what you're waiting for. If you didn't catch all of this, you're waiting for that, Right, so hopefully some of you, knew that that was a likely area where at least we knew algos were likely to step in there. Look at the reaction we got. Then we're over Christmas, right? You've got some of that volume dries up a little bit, but all it did was give you an opportunity to get in if you weren't comfortable buying it down here. As I often say, if you can't stomach the buy here, you wait for the 1-2. Or you can't take that one. Well, how about this 1-2? So you've had multiple opportunities to get on board here. Now, don't be surprised if we head up and we start to challenge this 1-6-1-8. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Maybe a push up towards the upper parallel. Maybe we've got to convert this from modified to original. That gets really interesting. Now look at that. Now we start to think about how the time component affects the median lines. Now where's our target? Well, you gotta consider the fact that there's a time variable here. Do you see that? So it would if we're going to go up here, it'd be better hurry up and do it, right? And that's 21,000. So that seems less likely. So you've got to push over, and that's where when you start to take more time than these pivots are offering relative to that median line, that's when you go to an alternate. So that's where we look at it and say, okay, well maybe we're going to shift. We got to come over price and time. Well, that's kind of interesting there. So we'd hit the upper parallel right at the 1-6-1-8. Don't be surprised if that isn't exactly where we're headed. We see a little cluster here, but the median line hasn't been as predominant as the modified shift. So I would defer to the modified shift here and see what kind of reaction we get. Here's our algo target. Here's our high probability zone. Here's your next trade. Okay, guys, I'll wrap it there.